Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
Let me tell you the use case for that. Let me give you an example. We have an API like any third-party API which you have to connect to. And there is an URL, there is some username, password, a PI key and API, something like that. Some credentials you need to connect to that, a PI. Now you will, of course, make an HTTP call to that to connect to that API to make that call to that API. Now one way is, of course you will write the backend code. But to read those URL and username password, whether you will prefer to hard code that in your code base or whether you want to make it as a part of some configuration. Of course, configuration is the best solution. Not hard coding these things in the code is a good solution because these sort of things where there are some private sort of things, some credentials, some endpoints. These sort of things should be made as a part of configuration and not as part of not should be hard coded in the code. What AEM provides us with a provision of OSGI configuration. Yesterday I created this OSGI configuration. Let me just show it to you. Where is my virtual machine? This one is the OSGI configuration. This one is the configuration. Basically, to create an OSGI configuration, the annotation we use is add direct object or definition. I told you, in AEM everything is simple class only, but we just use the required annotations to make it either a service or might either make it a configuration or either make it some other type of file. Here to make a configuration, we used object class definition. This is the annotation and we gave the name of this configuration as photo configuration. And here we said attribute definition and whatever values we want to be made as configurable. We pass it over here. Like here that attribute definition, the name of this is API URL and the value will be URL. I will show you how it goes. Similarly, there is another attribute definition and the username attribute definition passed. This is a simple OSGI configuration that we have created. Now, once an OSGI configuration that you create like this is the API URL username and password. Now you can refer this inside multiple services. Like here one of my services, Tojo word service that we created. Here to refer it, we use add direct designate. It's an OCD again. OCD is the object class definition only. OCD is equal to the name of the configuration class. And within the service, when you use add direct designate OCD this configuration name. Then in the init method means the initial method where you have the add direct activate, you will get the object of that configuration. Here, I received object of this configuration and I assign this object inside my local instance variable. Now let me create another method like public string get API details. Now to read the values whatever will be inputted inside that configuration, we will use that. Let me say return.api. What was the name? The name is URL. This name we will use URL. Similarly, let me put some dots in the middle. tojoconfig.url username. tojoconfig.password. Why is this giving some issue? Oh sorry, I missed a quick break. Let me put some string in the big name. And now what I can do is I can simply call this method inside my model. Here I have my model and here I can call this method, like the way we were previously calling. Again I will get public string get, let me name it as get API, simple like that. API. And we have already created that Tojo word service instance over here. And I can directly call the get API details method over here. And that's what I wanted to return. Again, I am showing you what I did is here. I created the configuration. A configuration once created can be left inside multiple services. Now, here I have this configuration. We will be using at the rate of the task definition and for all the attributes. The value we want to be made as configurable. We will use attribute definition and the name. Here, like we have these different attributes. And once you create once you refer to as a configuration inside your service by using a red ring name, you will get a bit of that inside the activate method. And from here you can read the object and further use it like simple way. Now if I will build this code base. Here I am main one filling. I can be auto. Just wait till then let me open my disk here. If I open the page, my board has just been deployed. It takes a minute for the server to data. Go over here and go to. And here is a page or any page like this, and we can use anything. Let me just remove all the other components. Here I have this. Let me remove this for now. And let me just simply place my word component. Sorry, Tojo word component. Here I have it's over here. Now what we can do inside the CRXT, we can refer it /p. I can call this method if I will go over here. Inside the Tojo. And my component, and where is my component? Will be somewhere below. Tojo word. If I will go over here. And let me just call it. I will call it over here. Here are the details that. Let me call it at the top. When I will call it by the method name. What is the method name? Here it will be API. If I will save it, if I will run it. Let me just run it. It says API details. As after, I printed nothing. Because we created the configuration, but we didn't give any values to it. One way is to give the values. We have a console. I told you about that console. There is a system console. There is a system console, which is an admin console. Only admin user can know it. These are very secure properties. That is why you can provide the values from here. If you go over here, you get the third option below the OS. Here you get the third option, that is configuration. If you will go to the configuration, here you can see your configuration. What was the name of the configuration? It was Todo configuration. Let me just search this Todo configuration. Here you can see, here is your configuration. And if I will open it as of now, it does not have any value. Let me just input. Let's say the URL is like the URL of web.com. The username is app username and app password. Let me just save it. And if I will refresh my page, you will see those values. You can see these values are getting picked up. If you change it now, if you change it in the value, it is something different. Like abhi sikam, appsi and appsi password, and let me save it. And let me refresh it. And you will see the updated values over here. These are the password that I may be interested in. These are the OSGI configuration, which you can, of course, which should not be hard-coded. You can change it something which you think that you want to change on fly. Whose value you want to change on fly. Let's say you have like the same example. You have the AP URL, you pay password and username. Now these things, of course you want hard code in the code. And sometime, maybe in some of the, maybe during, in the middle, these values may get changed. Like the third party, say that my password has been changed. Now, if you have to change that, if it has been hard-coded in your code base, then it would be an issue for you that because you have to redeploy your whole code by changing that password. That is an issue. Just because of that, we make it as an OSGI configuration. We make it as an OSGI configuration. And the values of this can be changed at any point in time through our disk console. OSGI configuration console. This is our configuration where all the configurations are available. It's rest all our Adobe configuration and we have created this as our own configuration. Now, one thing here is that you see that after we deployed our code, we have to supply these values. We have to input these values at this OSGI configuration. The first time also, the values were not there and it was printing as blank. And we have to provide these values. Now there is an alternative to this where you can provide default values. Here you get the default option. You can see if you want to provide some default value. Let's say your URL is Google. You wanted to connect to Google account. And username is Google. Username. Again, password is like Google. Now what will happen? The first thing, when you will deploy your code, it will take up these values. If I will deploy my code now, what will happen is I have to restart my disk as well. But what happened? Let me just remove these as well because these are what I provided. If I will remove this and will save this and let the code also get deployed. The code is deployed. And I think I have to redeploy. It is saving. Yes, finally, let me also redeploy my code. What will happen is, I do not have any default configured values provided to this configuration. But I am providing the default values through my code. If I will refresh, let me just see if it will open that code configuration. If it will open it. Let me just refresh it. Why did not get the values? Let me just redeploy my code. Let me just see. I think the default values are not getting picked. I think we are doing something wrong. Default value. Default value. And here we can avoid. I think like this. Let me just do it in this way. We will just do it in this way. Google API has username. And supply the same default password over here. Let's just test it. Let me just refresh it now. Changes are getting. Let me just do it. Let me just do it. Let me just read it. I gave the default value over here. Basically, what I'm trying to do is, instead of supplying the values from like, I am trying to get the default values from my local code base. And then, of course, at runtime, I can change the values at any time. That we already saw how we can change the value. I'm just trying to get the default value. It did not pick up. Let me just change something. Just teaching. This is my code getting properly deployed. Let me do my unclean. I'm just cleaning all and then let's do that again. I provided the default value. This is the default value. Here we are reading these values. Oh, I think I got the problem. I think I have. What happens is the configuration get fetched. Inside the system config, there would be an OSGI configuration for this one. This one would be causing the issue. Yes, let me just delete and save it and again redeploy my code. But I have to also remove my code. Let me just open this. I think since my code was getting deployed, that is. You can see now the changes are reflecting. This was happening because you can see Google API username and the password. And even the page. Also, if I will refresh it, it should start picking up my latest value. Let me just save this. Basically, you can see it started picking up my all the latest. Now, if you want to change it, let's see your username got changed. If I would change it over here, let's say Google New Google API. I'm saying new Google. Once you have the default value set, that's. But later on you can change those values at any time to this console. And this can only be opened by administrator user. Only administrator can change that. You can see the username now got changed. Now it doesn't matter what value you are supplying from code base, but you can change it on runtime. Any number of services can refer this configuration, like you have multiple services. We had all those services, like it depends in case most of the time a configuration is created for a service. But sometimes there are many services which wanted to use the same configuration. Let's say they are different. Means different like different brands, like the different brands running on the same. Let me give you an example. There are different websites, basically different websites of the same brands. Like one is the brand A, one is the brand B, and both the brand A and brand B comes under the same umbrella. Now they have the same configuration they have to use. It's just that the URL and all those things are different. I will tell you how that is being done. Now let's take an example like you have multiple environments. Again the run mode thing, like say you have multiple brands, you have multiple environments. There is a prod, there is a QA, there is a tab. Now you have this configuration. You made this value configuration and you can see the values of this at runtime. But how would you change it? You have to go to the system. You can change it or you can provide configuration default values over here in the configuration. There is another way which you can provide the values, and that is based on the run mode. What happens? They give you this configuration value to be picked up differently for different run modes. Let's say for prod environment, you have a different username and different password, and for newer environment, you have a different username and different password. Of course, that is an expected case. This will happen because your prod would have a different credentials to connect and your load would have different credentials to connect. Those sort of scenarios where you have to use different configuration based on different run modes. What we do is, if you go to System Console, if you will go to your CD inside your Tojo folder, remember the system configuration. Here is the place where configuration gets fetched. If you go to your Tojo, here is your config. You see, there's many folders: config auth, config config publish, config state. Config, you can say these are all the if else condition. Here, this is the default case and the rest all are depending upon your run mode. What was our run mode? What was the run mode in our case? The author. And what were the other two names for our server? It was, let me just go to the server. Let me choose. Here if I will go and open this startup, here the run modes are prod, BPM and author. These three are the modes, or you can say the names of the server. Here what I can do is I can copy. Let me just close this. Let me just copy this and let me simply paste it below your project folder. I'm pasting it and let me just save all and genome it too. Conf. What are the name of your run modes? Author. And this BPM as well. Let's see. Now I create a folder by using this config author. Now this folder also matches your run matches with the name of your run mode. But the best match folder is the first one that will be considered. This one is the best one. Let's say if I create another folder. Let's say if I do paste and here rename it to config. Anything like this. It can be anything. Now all the names should be separated by dot after config. Now you have three folders which matches your run mode. But the best one that matches is config author BPM. Because your run modes are prod, BPM and author. Here this also matches, and all the four are matching. This config thread is also matching. But the best match folder is the first one that will be considered and then the rest. Here if I will create a configuration. See, you have a configuration. How do you create a configuration? Remember, a configuration can be referred inside multiple services. You create a configuration by the name of your service. What is the name of your service? It is package name and then the class name. It is told you what service. What I will do is I will create a node whose type will be OSDI. What is the name? Just a minute. What is this type? What is the primary type? It is Sling OSDI config. Here I will create a node which is Sling OSDI config. And here I will give the name Service Jawad Service. Here I created my configuration and here I can give the value. What are the values? Let me give you a URL. URL is, let's say this is the time, it is Yahoo. And username is, say, Yahoo user and password is Yahoo user. What I did is double Yahoo like it came. Sorry, I could be here because of my browser. My browser is not able to open this properly, that I could not see it here. Also, you can edit it like this. Just a value you can give. Here, if I will save it, I could just write this floating. And here now, this one is the best one. If I will copy this, and we will create it inside the config thread as well and paste it over here. And here I have, let's say this one is the values inside, this is the values inside, this one is like prod username. Here instead of Yahoo, best match I'm naming is Yahoo. The run mode here is prod. And let me just save it, and if I go and refresh my page, you can see the Yahoo one is matching. Yahoo username, Yahoo password. Now, if I will remove this, if I delete this, let me just rename it to something different that it should not. Let me put one now. Which one will be match? If I place this, if I copy this, and if I copy it below this as well, let me just paste it. And this one is author prod. Let me give the value this author prod. This one is author prod. This one is also author prod. This one is also author prod. Let me just save it, and if I refresh now, you tell me which one will be, which one will get called. This one, of course, will not match because the service name is not matching. It's either this one or this one. Of course, this one will get matched because this folder is the best matching run mode. Because here two run modes are matching and here only one. This one will get the preference. Now it will see whether the configuration sits below this folder. Because this one is the best matching, but the configuration doesn't sit. Let's try to search for the next best matching. In case, if none of matches, then it will go inside the config and will look over there. If I will refresh over here, you see author prod is the author prod pass. Here always what is the perspective is you create a configuration like the way I did. Here is where do you create the configurations. If I show you from the code base in this, that is the UI, FRC and the GCR root and the app, you have the two, and here you have all these folders here below. Basically, you create the configuration depending on different run modes. These are created in the form of XML. These are the XMLs. This is one XML. In the same way, you will also just copy paste and find your own property name and the property value. And the best matching configuration. Depending on the best match run mode, folder name will be referred or will get called. Any questions, any doubts on this? Basically, how many times a question is being asked that you have a scenario where you have to connect to some third party and has some APK and the user in and those like credentials to connect to that. API differs from prod to lower environment. First is where would you keep that configuration and how would you read the configuration for different, basically environment. How do you solve this problem is basically what we saw now. The best place to keep this is inside the OSGI configuration that an admin user can go inside the System Console Config Manager, and it can change at any point in time. Let's consider if tomorrow the password in your username get changed and they can change it and without deploying the code. However, You can still provide the default values for the configuration. Now the second thing is how you made it, how you can call it. Then the answer would be, then you have to start, then basically you have to name different, you have to provide different names to your different environment. Like if there is a prod and you provide a prod and what you, and then create the folders below your apps, your project hierarchy with the name config.run mode. The best matching folder name will be the one that will get the preference in, and in case the configuration that is a Sling OSGI configuration is the Sling OSGI configuration always. The type should be Sling OSGI configuration. If this file matches, then it will be the one. If the file matches, then that will be the one that will get called. But it depends upon the best matching run mode folder. If none of the folder has that, then it is the config folder from where it will be picked. This is how you create OSGs. This is a concept of OSGI configuration in your area. Let me switch. Let me move to another topic that is similar to OSJ that makes the use of OSJ configuration, that is scheduler. Scheduler is nothing but say, if you am telling you about some of the back ending, I know you are more of a front end. You are a more of a sorry BA, but I think that would be good for you. Scheduler is already scheduler. I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling you with this example. You see here, what they have done is what is the purpose of the scheduler. Scheduler is something you want to schedule. Like, say you want to run a nightly job every day, that there is a job, that there is a background work that should always get executed at a particular time and a particular day. Let's say you consider that you have some ATM locator, like our ICICI Bank website is there, and there is an ATM locator component. Now that ATM component locator that needs the location of the ATM. What happens you have created a separate API which provides you with the latest ATM today. Like if some new ATM comes and then that API will provide you with the latest ATM details. Now in the AEM, what you want to always hit the what solution is that whenever the component will be refreshed, you will call that API, and from the API you will get the results, and that you will show it on the page. But that is not good, because every time we come from a component, if you will call a third-party API, that will consume a lot of time. What this solution is considered in these case of scenarios is that you create a scheduler, and this scheduler can run on nightly basis at any point in time, and that time we define on the basis of this cron expression. We provide a cron expression that helps us in telling when this scheduler will automatically run, or this scheduler is nothing but the Java class only. This is simply a Java class which we say that it should execute at a particular time, at a particular date, or every day, whenever you want. Here, by using cron expression, you understand what is cron expression. Cron is a general concept. It is nothing related to AEM. Basically, cron helps you in. If you will search cron creation cron, this cron expression for cron maker it will give you. Cron maker is simply that helps you in telling you about. Basically, see, it is about the time, or at what particular time, at what particular date, when you want this particular task to be executed. There, these crons are being used. Cron maker is a way which helps you with cron expression. What is cron? Cron, you can just search. Cron is nothing but that expression of time. Here is an expression of time. If your application is trying that expression of time, then it means that that application can run at that particular time, which cron expression is indicating. Here my cron expression, first it says it is second, then it says it is minute, then it is hours, then it is days, then it is weeks, and then it is something like month or year. It is like this. You can just search it on the net. In the cron maker we go. It is like this. You see, first is minute, sorry, hourly, I think it is second, it is not minute. It is minutes, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, year. Here you can provide, like if you want to create any cron. Let's say cron creation. Cron creator. Here, these are the here. You see every second, every minute. If you want a cron expression like what does, this says. Describe expression. Here, it says this thing every 1 second starting at 100. If I say this thing, I have expression. It says at every 1 minute, every 1 second. If I use, let's say this one, the one that we already have, let's say this one. Let's say what does this cron expression is saying. If I paste this, it is every second starting at the only second after the minute. Every second, what will happen is the scheduler will run. Now again, if you will see to create this, you see this site is very useful in understanding cron. Cronformator.cron, our scheduler understands or obeys cron expression. On the basis of the cron expression. This basically, you can say this Java file will be executed and it will execute or do the business logic that is written inside this Java class at this particular time. Here you see again, we have object class definition. Here, what we did is, instead of creating it as a separate class, what we did is we created within this class. We created the scheduler within this class only. Because and this is also a service you see at the component service is equal to the parent class name. Even if you want, you can provide this class name as well. At the component here, it says that it is again a service only scheduler. Here we call it as a scheduler, but it is nothing but a service. We implement it with the enable interface. If you know about enable, I will tell you about what enable is. Do you know, like when do we use enable? When we implement a class with enable. What happens? See, your main site is executing. Like you see, your users are landing on the site and they visit the site, and behind the scene, your server, AEM server, allocates this CP or memory or thread or whatever it is. They allocate for the execution of a user. They allocate the threads or CP, U or whatever is needed for the execution for that user. Now, when we implement the class with the enable interface, what happens? It separates memory and a separate thread. A separate CPU thread gets allocated to this class as well. What will happen? This class will work independent of the main thread that is serving the end user. There will be a main thread that will be serving the end user need, and there will be separate thread that will be created that will be useful running this class. By this way, your main thread is running parallelly. This thread is also running. It's not that if we are running the scheduler, then it will hamper the performance of end user. The end user is running on a separate thread and this is running on a separate thread. That is why what we do is, let's say, like there are many situations you would have come across in your code, in your coding, where what you have to do is you have to send a mail. But during sending a mail, you want sending a mail as an asynchronous operation and not synchronous. That you should not wait for the mail to send. Then only you should. Like, let's say you have a payment thing. Before the payment, you want to send a mail. Like, let's say your details are getting saved into database and then your payment is getting initiated. Now, once your details get saved into database, you have to send a mail to the end user that your details have been saved with us. And then you have to initiate the payment process. Now, the first step is saving the details in the database. Second is sending the mail. Third is initiating the payment process. Now, if you make it a synchronous process, then what will happen? You will save the details in the database, then you will send the mail. Once you see that the mail has been sent, then only you initiate the payment process. But this is not good. What you do is basically you save it in the database and you make it a synchronous process. In Java, basically I am telling you, in all other applications, in all other languages also, you do it in this way only. And you create an asynchronous task, basically, which will run parallelly to the main thread. Parallelly, your task for sending the mail will get executed, and you will parallelly start with the payment process. Your main thread will be taking care of the saving. After saving the database, your main thread will be taking care of payment process, initiating the payment process, and parallelly, you will create another thread that will send the mail to the end user. To initiate a parallel thread, what you use is in Java. Basically, you create a separate thread by using the runnable interface. You implement it. Implement any class with runnable interface and that will make a separate thread for that class. If you in ET world also, there would be some like threads, concept of threads. Like along with the main thread, you want to execute a new thread. How you execute that is by using the in Java. You use the runnable interface. Here for the schedulers also. You want it in this way because the schedulers, we wanted the execution to be parallel to the main user's execution. That main thread should continue doing its work and our thread also, the scheduler thread also. And here we created an OSGI compilation. If you want, we can do it in a separate class as well. But here we are doing it in the same class because we know that the service has to be used within this. This configuration has to be used within this state. If I go below here again, if you will see inside the add activate, I named it as activate and here I received the object for this config. Here I named it as config. Here you see, here I have named it as config. In my case, I named it as tojoconfig. That is why in my service, I was receiving it as tojoconfig. In this case, they named it as config. That is why they are receiving it as config. And they receive like here. Now the important thing is that cron expression property name should always be scheduler underscore expression. Here, this property is important because this property value is the cron expression. And here we said scheduler concurrent is equal to pause. What does this mean is consider I have this 30. Here is the 30-second effect. Let's say if thread A for this scheduler is running. Now this thread doesn't complete and behind the scene, a new thread after 30 seconds started. Now that thread will not start till the time my previous thread doesn't complete. If I have provided concurrent is equal to pause. If I provided concurrent is equal to 2, then it doesn't matter. The new thread will also get started. This thing has to be used carefully. If you want serial execution, sequence execution of serial execution of your thread for your scheduler. Here, I named it as simple like, let me name it as Tojo. Let me say it should run every second. Let me say it should run every second, and what it should do is it should read the values. Now you see, this is also service only. Now I told you to call a service from another service. What do you use? What annotation do you use? To call a service from another service, like I have my Tojo service. If you use the service inside with this service, what would you use? At rate reference annotation. At the rate reference annotation, and here I can use private Tojo. What service? And here is my Tojo. Now, let me call some method. Let's say, let me call some method over here. In the run method, I am putting some logger. Let me say I am putting some debug log. Let me say I will tell you about these logs. And let me say here, inside the run method, all the execution will happen. Let me say that for scheduler, we cannot return anything back to front end because scheduler is something that runs behind the screen. Here if I will say I will call this Gojo word service and the method name that is get API details. I am calling the same method name and I received a response over here. A PI. And this API, let me call it over here. It is now running with the parameter, now running with the PI details. And here let me provide the API details. If I will, let me just, and we will see in the log file, I will also now with this. Let me just firstly build this. Now what I am doing is I am just printing the logs to my log file. Whatever I am here, I called my service here. I referred my service within another service. This is a scheduler, but this is service only. Now, here I use the enter rate reference annotation and within this service, I call this method API details. And that's what I printed inside my logger info. Now to see where your logs get printed, the important thing is if you will go inside the system console. Sling, here you have the log support. Either you can go and do your logs from here. You see, there are many log files. Here all your logs gets printed inside the error log. And let us see if the code is built. Yes, the code is built. And if I will go over here and I will go to the error log. Here, let me go to the bottom. You see, the Codio's simple schedule task is now running with the API details. You can see this. Now the important thing is you see, it is running every second. Every second. How do I see the logs? Let me just again show it to you. I go to this. But this is not the suggested way. Log support. The best way is that inside Crux Extract you have many folders. I told you, inside the repository folder do not change anything because all your repository is full. But there is a log folder also which is very useful. I will tell you about this whole log folder tomorrow. But here you also have your error log, which gives all your application specific logs, all the execution. All your application specific logs are logged over here. You can see Qdio's scheduled task is now running with the API. It is only continuously every second because we changed the timing over here to 1 second. And also we made this as a configuration my parameter. And here we are printing this as well. My parameter, you see. Now if I go to this over here, OSGI and configuration, because we made this as an OSGI configuration. OSGI configuration. Again obvious definition. What is the name? It is KDO scheduled task. If I search for this name, I should find it over here. You see KDO scheduled task. And if I provide, here is the cron expression, and here let me provide a name. 2 kma. And let me save it. And if I will go and here you see your error logs will be refreshed and it is running continuously. And if I go to the bottom, you see now it also printed my param as well. You see this param is also getting printed with value tjo param and also it is author. Username, author, password. If I go and change it over here author. Here if I change anything like author, this password also. And let me put it over here and it is also. And save it. And just let this get refreshed. And if I go to the bottom, you see here these details are also request. This is a scheduled task which is automatically running every second. Here based on this cron expression, you can decide when it should run. And that you can. Of course, you can make a cron expression by using this cron parameter. And your scheduler respects your cron expression but conditionally. Your name of this property should be scheduled. The expression should implement the enable interface. It has all the service. Till this point, it was a service only. But you implemented it with the enable interface and you make it an OSGI configuration with availability. It made it a scheduler. It converted this service into a scheduler. And you can refer. Since it is a service, you can refer another service by using iterate reference notation to refer the service within the sling model you used at the rate. What adaptation did you use at the rate? The service. Here if I will go, see at the rate OSGI service, I used to refer my service inside the sling model. What you will use to refer a service from another service, you will use at the rate reference. Here I used iterate reference. And inside the run method, you will write all your execution. All the execution that can. Now you can connect the third party from here. Or you can call another service that will connect to the third party. Whatever you want to do, you will do it inside the run method. And this run method is defined, cleared inside the enable interface. This is our enable, which has been making this class as a separate thread. And here it provides the run method where you will write all your execution. Go and finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.